Okay, we're going to get started here today with our session on sustainability. For our first speaker, we have Shane McCullough speaking on a European perspective on reducing the environmental footprint of pork production. Shane is a pig farmer from Ireland with 4 modern high health and high welfare farms comprising 2,000 sows producing 50,000 pigs a year. He holds a master's in pig health and production from the Royal Veterinary College of London and works as a lecturer in Munster Technological University, as well as providing consultancy into sustainable pig production around the world. Shane sits on many different stakeholder and advisory groups and is the secretary of the Irish Pig Health Society. Please join me in welcoming Shane.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Dalton. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Right, so my name is Shane McCullough, and I'm going to take a look at what we're doing in Europe at reducing the carbon footprint of pork. So a quick introduction to myself. My family, we have 2,000 sows across 4 modern sites. Behind me here, that's the 1,000 sow unit. Also beef cattle, we have 140 pedigree suckler cows, mainly continental French breeds, Cilliers and Aubracs. A farmer and shareholder in the Truly Irish brand. That was a brand set up by many pig farmers about 12, 13 years ago now to market their own pork. My father's the CEO of that, so my family have been heavily involved in that. My educational background is I graduated from Cork Institute of Technology first with a bachelor's in ag. Then I said I'd go and do an extra year, and I did my honours degree then in Waterford. I then said I'd do another year, and I did my postgrad in livestock sciences in Aberystwyth in Wales. And then I said I'd do some more, and I did my master's at the Royal Vet College in London, where I looked at associations between disease status, performance, antibiotic use and biosecurity on Irish pig farms. And I'm going to do some more. I'm about to start my part-time PhD. So I always said at the start if I didn't like it I wouldn't do any more, but it seems like just keep being a sucker for punishment when it comes to educating. And then I'm also working as a lecturer in Munster Technological University, so I've always had some roles part-time off-farm, and with the last year or so I've been a lecturer in agricultural sciences in Munster Technological University, so it's not too far away from me. Also industry roles, so I've been heavily involved with the Irish Farmers Association, who are the main farming organisation and lobbyist organisation in Ireland. I sat on the Pigs Committee, and now I sit on the Animal Health Committee. Also the secretary of the Irish Pig Health Society for many, many years, and also director of an Irish NGO called BOHER. And in BOHER, it's the Irish word for road, and we help people to help themselves. So basically it's supporting sustainable livestock development programs in the developing world. One that I was heavily involved in was where we shipped 260 pregnant gilts to Rwanda, 130 families, they each got 2 pregnant gilts. A female of every litter is passed on to another family in the community. Some families got boars, so that's just an example of the projects that we have. It just helps people to grow sustainably, lift their families out of poverty, and so on. So, an introduction, and I thought about this, what will I talk about? Because I could talk about what we're doing on my own farms in detail, I could talk about what we're doing in Ireland. So what I said I would do is maybe look at, to start with just the general pigmeat production in Europe, and then let's go into detail with a few countries, Spain, Denmark, the Netherlands and Ireland, and we'll look at a few things that we're doing at home on my own farms. So 27 countries in the European Union, the main pig producing ones, Spain, Germany, Denmark, the Netherlands, France, Italy, Poland, and then the rest following closely behind. And when we're looking at global pork production, this is where the European Union is sitting. So 23 million tonnes of pork produced last year, and much the same is forecasted for this year. So we're about half of what China's producing and about double what the United States is producing. And then we have the rest there, Brazil, Russia, Vietnam, Canada, Mexico, South Korea and Japan. So in terms of production, it's staying fairly much the same. But then when we look at our EU pig numbers, and this was the last census, which was made June 2022, we see that there are some reductions. So Spain, very much the same, about 32 million pigs. Germany saw a 10% reduction in their breeding herd from 2022 to 2023, mainly because of ASF and also welfare regulations. Denmark and Poland saw decreases of about 9%, and the rest very much staying the same. But overall, 2021 to 2022, we saw a 5% decrease in the EU sow herd. And for this year, Rabobank are projecting a 3% decrease. So there is quite a fall with our pig population numbers. Now, while we're looking at the major pig-producing pig population countries here, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're also in that order for production. That's because the likes of Denmark and the Netherlands will send a lot of their weaners to Germany. Spain imports a lot of weaners from Germany, from the Netherlands. They also import finishers from France and from Portugal. And then Germany export a lot of their weaners to Poland. So in most countries, very much exporting their weaners across the borders. And this is very much what's really driving sustainability in Europe, the European Green Deal. So this was approved in 2020, and the European Union are striving that Europe will become the first carbon neutral continent. It's going to transform the Union into a modern, resource-efficient and competitive economy, ensuring that there's no net emissions of greenhouse gases by 2050. So basically, it's looking at all the existing legislation we have and seeing what we can do to make it more sustainable. So, for example, in terms of energy, wanting to supply clean, affordable and secure energy, mobilising industry for a clean and circular economy, building and renovating in an energy and resource-efficient way, zero pollution ambition for a toxic-free environment, preserving and restoring ecosystems and biodiversity, accelerating the shift to sustainable and smart mobility, and of course then when it comes to agriculture, we have from farm to fork. So this is a fair, healthy and environmentally friendly food system. So looking then at the farm to fork strategy, so this is ensuring that there's a carbon neutral or positive environmental impact from agriculture and food. Helps to mitigate climate change and adapt to its impacts, reverse the loss of biodiversity, ensure food security, nutrition and public health, making sure that everyone has access to sufficient, safe, nutritious, sustainable food, preserving the affordability of food while generating fairer economic returns, fostering competitiveness of the EU's supply sector and promoting fair trade. So sustainable food production, combating food loss, sustainable food processing, distribution and sustainable food consumption. So we heard a little bit about that this morning. For example, by 2030 we're looking to reduce our pesticide use by 50%. We're looking to reduce our fertiliser use by 20% and also aiming to ensure that 25% of our produce is organic. So some of them, in my opinion, are quite ambitious. For example, if we look at the organic, I think 10% of the EU agricultural lands are organic. Some of the countries quite high, like Sweden, Austria, Estonia, but we're already seeing a lot of them are contracting. It's contracting in Germany, it's contracting in Austria, and you know, particularly in Ireland, I think we have 17,000 dairy farmers and only 75 are organic. And we've had the government pushing a very, very strong organic scheme in Ireland in the last year, getting dairy and beef farmers to move to organic. But now what we're seeing is that there's an oversaturated market with limited processing supply. So farmers that have moved to organic in the last year and availed of these grants to move to organic, they're actually selling their produce to conventional processors. So what's going to happen there? I don't know. But I think personally it's quite ambitious. And there were warning signs about a year ago when the Irish government brought out that organic scheme. But look, we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But a lot of different things in a lot of different countries, but it does seem to be contracting a little bit. So let's look at Spain, the global powerhouse of pork. And the reason why I say that is we'll look at just how much that they have grown in the last 20 years. It's phenomenal. So if we're looking at the last population census from Spain, December 2022, they had 2.6 million sows. And if we're looking at that in more detail, that's 1.9 million conventional sows, and then 400,000 Iberico sows. So Iberico is the traditional Iberian black pig that's free-ranging and feeding on acorns, and also just over 340,000 gilts. Now look at where the production of pigs is located in Spain. 29% in Aragon and 23% in Catalonia. So more than half of all pig production is centralised in this small area in Spain. The rest of the country, Castilla, 13, Andalusia, 8, Valencia, 3, not so much. So it's very much focused up here. And look at the growth of their numbers in the last 20 years. So in the year 2000, 22 million, and now they're up at 34 million. Absolutely phenomenal increases. And again, they're very much characterised by their integrated production system. So the integrators have control of the value chain, they own the pigs, they produce and supply the feed, the veterinary services, and they own the slaughterhouses. The farmers are responsible for the labour, the building and energy costs, and the manure management. And it's very much based on long-term contracts. And when we're looking at the latest figures, we can see that there's been an increase in the number of integrators. So in 2015, 65% of the industry was integrated, and as of 2021, that's risen to 74%. And we're seeing that the cooperative models and the independent farmers, they're all falling. And the growth we're seeing is integration. So more and more farmers selling out to these integrators. And that's really what we're seeing with the moves in sustainability in Spain, is that these integrators have a lot of power, they have a lot of money, and when they're able to buy these smaller independent farmers, they can then invest in more sustainable technologies. So while in some of the countries you'd see legislative pressures to move to more sustainable practices, in Spain it's very much the cause of these large integrators buying the farms and then investing in them. And this slide is from Anporgrapor, which is the Spanish pig producers organisation, and this just shows the phenomenal growth that they've had. So starting in 1960, they got African swine fever from their neighbours in Portugal. They had no exports of pork. Their self-sufficiency was as low as 50%. They weren't in the EU. They were a net importer of pork. And it was only then that they were beginning to see this integration model, because they weren't in the EU, so they didn't really have much friends in Europe. Because Franco, of course, the fascist regime, that only ended in 1975. So they were very much cast away from the rest of Europe. And that's why they looked at you guys here in the USA and about the integrator model. And that's when they started looking at it more. And then when we get into the 80s, they joined the European Union in 1985. One of the goals that they had for joining was that they had to eradicate ASF. So it took from 1988 to 1995 to finally eradicate it. And then they started seeing this very strong growth. Exports began to the rest of the European Union. And then we saw a reduction of imports, and their self-sufficiency reached over 100%. In the year 2000, they began to regulate the pig sector with some restrictions in terms of environmental measures and in terms of where they were located. And then, since then, we've seen that there's more environmental regulations, a big emphasis on biosecurity, huge growth in the sector from in the new millennium, exports to the EU and to our third world countries, our third countries like in Asia. From 2015 then, they implemented the EU 120/2008 directive. They've seen huge growth in technology and efficient farms, development of their exports to third countries, reduction in antibiotic use. So they've gone from being a net importer to over 200% self-sufficient. So the growth in Spain has been absolutely phenomenal. However, it's come at a little bit of cost. Environmental pressures. So here's some of the headlines. Fears for environment in Spain as pigs outnumber people. Official figures show there are 50 million pigs to 46 million humans. The pig macro farms are taking over Spain, and this is what people here are protesting about. They call them macro pig farms. We were being invaded by pigs. Spain's pork revolution faces a backlash. So that looks quite bad, but let's go back to the map again. This is where over 50% of the pigs are based. Look at the rest. Look at all this area here, 4%, 6%, 8%. There's a lot of space that they can move their pig production to. That's far away from other farms and far away from people. I was at a conference down in Andalusia a few weeks ago in Seville. Vast area there with very, very few pigs. So is it as bad as it seems? I don't know. But we do know that the Spanish government, very, very pro-pig farming. It's up there with horticulture as the largest agricultural industry. And again, let's look at the livestock density. The average livestock density in Europe is 18.1 PCU per kilometre. Spain is well below it, 16.3. So in terms of looking at it, comparing to European figures, Spain doesn't have that many pigs as the rest. Ireland here, 31, we're quite high. That's mainly because of all our dairy cows in Ireland. That's a completely different story. We won't talk about the dairy cows. Quite controversial at the moment. And then the Netherlands, of course, 74. So the Netherlands, again, we'll mention them in a couple of minutes. Quite controversial and a lot going on there in the Netherlands. But again, in terms of Spain, they're below the EU average. And again, I mentioned that legislation in 2000, and that was updated in 2020. So basically, it's adopting that legislation to their new challenges in pig health, welfare, and the environment. Pig farmers have to have manure production management plans. Then they need to look at best practice for reducing pollution. Also have improved biosecurity, and also they're limited on their distance. So 1 kilometre from a farm to a farm. From a farm to a village, and then from a breeding farm, it's 2 kilometres from a breeding farm to another breeding farm, to a farm or to a village. And they're also restricted now in their maximum sizes. A farm has to have 750 livestock units or less. So Denmark. Denmark, well known as being probably one of the most efficient producers of pigs. And I threw in this graph here just to give you an example. This is their pigs weaned per sow per year. Denmark, 34. The US, ye are here at 27.3, Ireland is 29.6. So 34 pigs weaned per sow per year. By 2030, Denmark is aiming to go for 37. There really isn't anything stopping the Danes. They keep going for more, more and more. But when we're looking at the number of producers, that has really, really contracted in the last few years. It is getting more consolidated. The pig population, it has seen a growth from the year 2000 to the year 2021. But again, as I mentioned a few slides ago, their breeding herd did drop 9% from 21 to 22. And producing 35 million pigs, vast majority of them going south of the border to Germany. And again, the Danish pig population. So they've seen a 14% reduction from 22 to 23. This is actually newer figures. This was from April. Sows down 6%, breeding gills down 7%, piglets with sows down 9%, weaners down 12%, slaughter pigs down 24%. So the Danish pig population is falling significantly in the last 2 years. And again, that's because of our pressures with our feed costs that we've had in Europe. But the Danish Agricultural Commission, which is it's known as Landbrug, they have a strategy for pigs. So 2021 to 2023, quite an ambitious strategy. So they have 3 key strategic areas: health and production. So they want to keep out African swine fever. And you might have heard about that famous fence the Danes have. They have a fence the entire border of Germany to keep out African swine fever because of the boars. I think they only have a couple of wild boars left now in Denmark. They've been hunting them quite strongly to make sure they don't have any left in the country. But we know that they can swim, but we won't talk about that. But the Danes have a really impressive fence, and they're very proud of it as well. They're also working to reduce PRRS. They want to increase the number of finisher units because, like I said, a lot of them are going to Germany. And there is a lot of pressures now from NGOs about live export and transport distances in Europe. They want to improve their genetic progress, as if they couldn't improve it anymore. But look, they're going to keep pushing for those higher numbers. Pig welfare and societal acceptance, so loose lactating sows, very, very topical in Europe at the moment. And they want to improve piglet mortality. Piglet mortality is very, very high in Denmark, obviously, with those numbers. So in terms of societal acceptance, doesn't really look good. So they really want to work on that as well. Sustainability and certification, so they want to lower their climatic impact of pig production. They want to be able to document it. They want to remove zinc oxide without increasing their antimicrobial use. So if we're looking at that then in more detail, they have these major milestones. So for 2030, the Danes want to reduce their emissions by 50% in primary production. They want 60% of their manure to be biogassed, and they want to mostly eliminate PRRS. Now, a lot of their neighbours in Scandinavia don't have PRRS, Sweden, Norway and Finland, but how Denmark will keep it out, we'll see. 2050, again, very, very impressive goals here. They want to be climate neutral, like us all. But they also want all Danish pigs to be loose housed, and they want all Danish pigs to have intact tails. Intact tails, something very, very topical in Europe. Again, we won't go there. We won't talk about that now. They also want their Danish pigs to have the highest survival rates in the world and the highest health status. So again, that's quite interesting when we're seeing the numbers that their sows are pushing out. So the steps towards climate neutral production, they want to improve their feed efficiency. They want to develop and test solutions that reduce the loss of methane in manure storage, and look at these scrapers that will remove manure daily and that will allow that fresh manure to be used for biogas. By 2025, they want all imported soy to be produced sustainably. So in other words, they don't want it coming from deforested lands. And they have looked at their carbon footprint from birth to slaughter. Piglets, 14%, weaners, 21.5%, the finisher pig accounting for 59.1%, transport 0.3%, and slaughter 5.1%. So they do have very ambitious targets, but they do have a government that is really, really supportive of pig production in Denmark. So it'll be interesting in the next few years to see where the Danes will go here. Now, the Netherlands. This is where it gets interesting. So if we go back again to the slide with the livestock density, again, European average 18.1 PCU per kilometre, and the Dutch 74. So you might have seen all these Dutch farmer protests that have happened since 2020. Netherlands announces €25 billion plan to radically reduce livestock numbers. Farmer protests in the Netherlands show just how messy the climate transition will be. Mass protests holding the country to ransom, basically. Thousands and thousands of farmers on the roads, causing traffic jams. No farmers, no food, burning bales in the middle of the highways. So how did this all come about? Well, back in May 2019, the Council of State in the Netherlands ruled that the existing Dutch policy violated Dutch law and European regulations protecting vulnerable nature reserves. So they have 1.5 million dairy cows and 800,000 sows. And I was looking to see, in terms of the size of the Netherlands, what's that comparing to in terms of a US state, and it's about the same size of Kentucky. So then in September 2019, the government had a proposal to halve livestock numbers. And then on the 1st of October 2019, we saw the first mass protest by farmers at The Hague. They took thousands of tractors and they absolutely stopped the country. And they've done it dozens of times since. The airport, Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam, that's been hit by the farmers. They're really been very, very vocal about this. We've seen a subsidy scheme for the remediation of pig farms. So this is where the Dutch government will pay you to close down your pig farm. And we've seen about 300 Dutch pig farmers have availed of this in the last few years. And then on the 1st of October 2019, when they had the first mass protest, on that very day, a new political party was set up. Farmer Citizen Movement, Boerburger Beweging, or BBB, and it was set up by a lady called Caroline van der Plas, a well-known agricultural journalist who's worked a lot with the Dutch Pig Farmers Association. And her mother is Irish, by the way, so Caroline is half Irish. And in 2021, she won a seat in the general election. And then this year, and sorry, we'll just look at the map there. This is the nitrogen in manure production. So you can see the Netherlands here and Belgium, very, very high. So this March, they had the Senate elections, and the Senate is the upper house in the Dutch Parliament. They took 16 seats. The largest political party in the Dutch Senate is now the Farmer Citizen Movement. Populist Farmer Citizen Movement wins big in the Dutch election. Farmer Protest Party wins shock Dutch vote victory. They got more seats than any of the parties in the government coalition. And of course, the government coalition lost quite a lot of seats. So the whole debate around nitrogen and reducing livestock in the Netherlands, it's very much back on the plate because they're controlling the upper house in the Senate. So a lot of Europe now is watching this very, very closely, particularly in Ireland, because her mother there is Irish, has been quite vocal in the EU, in the Irish media the last couple of months. So we're watching this very, very closely, and we've had actually some groups trying to set up their own farmers' political party. Now, I don't think they will go anywhere because from what I've seen, they've very much been infiltrated by, these right-wing groups who are kind of very anti-government, anti-vaccine and things like that. So I'm not sure it'll go anywhere in Ireland. But in terms of the Netherlands, people across Europe, especially the governing parties in many other countries, watching what's happening here quite closely. So let's talk about Ireland. So the Irish pig industry, it's our third largest agricultural sector behind beef and dairy. And we've 1.6 million pigs and 127,000 sows. Now, in the latest pig census, we've seen that we've actually fallen 10% as well. The number of sows in pig have decreased by 11.1%. Gills and pigs have fallen by 10.9%. So as of our last census in December 2022, we have our lowest number of pigs in Ireland since 1988. Now, again, two factors here have a bit to play. Again, we've had the feed cost last year that really broke us. So some farmers did go out of business. However, we did get a payment from the Irish government of €120,000 last year, and we have to accept it if we cut our herd by 10%. So this 10% drop, not really sure if that's from farmers going out of business or if it's just farmers availing of that money. And I might add, of course, that 120 grand had to do you as a farmer. So even though a lot of us in Ireland have more than one farm, which are separate sites, separate companies, separate herd numbers, that €120,000 had to do for all of us. And at home, for my own farms, where we lost almost 2 million, that doesn't really go very far to fill that big black hole. Now, we 240% self-sufficiency. We produced 336,000 tonnes in 2021 and 248,000 were exported, worth about €540 million to our national economy. Not bad considering there's just over 300 pig farmers in the country. 67% going to Asian markets. China by far the number one customer of Irish pork. We've seen growth as well in the likes of Philippines, South Korea, Australia and Mexico, and a lot of it's been offset by this reduction in the UK since they left Brexit. But again, Brexit is not something we're going to talk about here. It's too controversial. And we have the largest herd size in the EU. So your average Irish pig farm will have 700 sows, typically farrow to finish. So we're all farrow to finish mainly. It's very much a European continental thing that you're fattening your pigs off-site. Whereas here in Ireland, very much farrow to finish. 40% home milling and 70% of us are wet feeding. So this is from Teagasc, the Agricultural Food Development Authority, and this is just an infograph that they publish every year looking at our key parameters. So this was published by them only a few weeks ago. Your Irish sows doing 14.81 born alive, the top 25% getting 15.3. Pigs produced per sow per year, 27.4. Low mortality, certainly compared to the Danes, 11.1% in the farrowing house. So Teagasc are, as I mentioned, they're our Agricultural Food and Development Authority. They're involved in research, advisory and education. They are funded both publicly and privately, so 10 cents from every pig goes to them as a levy. They've got 40 staff, 4 researchers, 6 advisors and quite a lot of postgrad PhD students. So I did my master's in conjunction with Teagasc and I'll be doing my PhD in conjunction with them as well. And they have a 200 sow pig research facility. And the reason that I want to include Ireland as well is because we have the lowest carbon footprint of pork in all of the European Union. So 4.8 kgs CO2 equivalent per kilo of pork. The rest of Europe, the average carbon footprint of pork is about 6 kilos. So we're doing quite well. This is quite old data, it's 2010. However, at the moment, the Teagasc Pig Department are rolling out a pilot study in conjunction with the Carbon Trust and Borbia, who are our national food marketing board, and that will benchmark Irish pig production. and generating a very accurate assessment. So we believe we're actually a lot lower than that. So this is a new project where we'll get to see it. There's been a lot of research done recently on growing Irish beans. Now again, Ireland, we're known for our dairy and for our green grass. So most of our land is going for our cows. Okay, so the elephant in the room in terms of Irish pig production is soya. Okay, we don't have homegrown proteins. But again, we're seeing now that there's potential for soybeans as a substitute in pig diets by using Irish-grown beans, and that will reduce our carbon footprint by 30%. So it's something interesting that's going to be happening there as well. Now, we're also looking at rapidly this year, a lot of pig farmers looking at installing solar panels, and we're seeing that almost all over the country. Now, the funding we're getting from the Irish government, it's only grant aiding installations up to 62 kilowatt output. Now, at home on one of our farms where we're installing it, we need about 3 times that. So we'll see what will happen there. The average farm has enough roof space to install 1,500 kilowatts of solar panels. So it would allow pig farmers to not only meet their own supply, but also become significant energy generators to the national grid. Animal Health Ireland. So this is our national pig health check. So it's a government-led programme funded by producers and the government with the aim of improving the profitability and sustainability of Irish pig industry through improved animal health. Now, animal health, very, very important for improving sustainability. And we have 5 key areas in pig health check. We have biosecurity, so we have to conduct biosecurity assessments every single year on the farm. We have to conduct these different animal welfare assessments. So one is that we have to look at the risk factors for tail biting, and that has to be done every year. Now, the animal health, we're looking at capturing ante and post-mortem data. So every morning when my pigs go to the slaughterhouse, in the afternoon I can log into the system and I can see how many condemnations there is. I can see if there's any ear or tail lesions. I can see if there's any erysipelas and so on. It gives you the national average and benchmarks you against your 3-month average and your yearly average and things like that. We also have to record our antimicrobial use every 3 months, and this is done online. And again, that is benchmarking us against the national average as well. And in terms of veterinary public health, we're looking at a review of the National Salmonella Control Programme. And again, why is animal health important for sustainability? Well, this is a really interesting infographic from my friends at Animal Health Europe. And when we're looking at animal health, we can see that healthy animals can achieve 10 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So, for example, healthy animals require less inputs, and better management can mean a 30% reduction in emissions. Up to 20% of global animal production is lost to disease. So vaccination ensures higher welfare, less illnesses and deaths, and making more efficient resource use and reducing the need to use antibiotics. Around 70% of the world's extreme poor depend on livestock for livelihood. So again, we can attribute about 10 of the Sustainable Development Goals to healthy animals. And this is something that we talk about at home on my own farm. So what we say at McAuliffe Pig Farms is we're guided by our 4 pillars of sustainability. And these again were mentioned this morning as well. Pigs, planet, profit and people. So we aim to increase our economic profitability through the improvement of productive output while maintaining high pig health and welfare and protecting our environmental resources. And I have a poster of the Sustainable Development Goals in my office reminding me that even though I'm a small pig farmer in the southwest of Ireland, I always have to think about how our business can contribute to Sustainable Development Goals. So, as an example, nutrient-rich natural fertiliser. So, to you this is manure, but to us it's a very, very valuable resource. As I mentioned, in Ireland, we're a grass-based production system, dairy cows everywhere, and our neighbouring farmers absolutely love to get this highly nutritious pig manure from our farms. And at this time of the year, we would have 2 of our trucks delivering full-time to farmers around the area. Our pig manure has to be spread with what's called LESS, low emissions slurry spreading systems. So this reduces our ammonia by 50% compared to our traditional use of splash plates. And it's also retaining an extra 3 units of nitrogen per 1,000 gallons of slurry. So again, we're getting grants now to change our slurry systems to these low emission spreaders. Manure aeration. So on one of our farms we have this manure aeration system. This is injecting compressed air into the manure. And it's reducing our ammonia emissions by 50%, and it also increases the nutrient value of that fertiliser that those farmers are getting from us. Diet formulation, again, look, this is nothing new. We work very closely with our nutritionists, using enzyme technology to maximise nutrient availability, reducing our soya by 20% and reducing emissions by 15%. Use of byproducts, so again, I mentioned dairy-based production systems, so there's a lot of dairy cooperatives near where I live, and we're able to get local high-quality dairy away that they would very much see as a waste. However, we're able to incorporate this into our diets. It's reducing our reliance on our imported grains and subsequently eliminating food miles and emissions. Energy, so on our farms we have air-to-water heat pads, basically like little hot water bottles, as you know, and these are powered by these air-to-water heat pumps. So they take the air from the outside, it heats a liquid refrigerant, the pump increases the temperature of the liquid, and then it releases that stored heat to the piglets. Our ventilation systems, we have what are called EC Blue fans, and this is a high efficiency and energy saving motor which is powered by what's called EC Blue motor technology, and that's reducing our energy usage by 50%. Rainwater harvesting, we have a lot of rain in Ireland. So the soft Kerry rain that blows in off the Atlantic that you guys send over here, we capture it on our roofs and we keep it in our underground storage tanks, and then we reuse this water for rain washing. And Teagasc recently did a study, a water footprinting study, and again it showed that in terms of water use, Irish pig farmers using a lot less than our European neighbours. Improved health and welfare. Now, you could give a whole talk about this, but by increasing our herd health and welfare, pigs are more productive, they reach market earlier, they have reduced emissions, and they save on feed costs. And this is a photo from our 600 sow unit, where in 2015 we installed completely loose farrowing pens. So it is coming down the road. At the end of this year, the European Commission will give a date on when farrowing crates will be phased out. So we're a couple of years ahead of the curve. So in this system, our pigs, our weaned pigs are much heavier. So yes, we have slightly more mortality, but that's offset by that increased growth. So they're reaching market weight quicker. So there's a lot of advantages to higher welfare systems and improved health. Improving farm biodiversity, so this is just something, me personally, that I'm interested in. I like improving biodiversity on my farm, so whether it's digging wildlife ponds, planting trees in field corners, that's my Rottweiler Tyson, or sowing these pollinator-friendly strips for bees and butterflies. I really like doing that, and I love to see nature come to the farms. And again, like I mentioned, the next investment on our farm is solar panels. We'll be putting them on our roofs this year. I took that photo last Thursday when we had an energy audit from one of the companies that gets involved in applying for your solar panels. And what they said to me was, well, you're doing things pretty good. All we can recommend is that you get an electric forklift. So, doing well, and we're really looking forward to getting the solar panels up this year. So to summarise, just remember those 4 Ps. Pigs, planet, pigs, people, profit and planet. And this isn't just for Europe, but it's for yourselves as well. We need to provide more people with healthy, nutritious and safe pork. We need to have less impact on environmental and natural resources. We have to be adaptable to changes in climate, consumer demand and disease risks. We have to continually improve pig health and welfare. And again, I think that you guys here in the States, you do this very, very well, engaging with the public. And I never say educating the public, because we have to engage with them and listen what they have to say. And it's important that if you have a good news story, please talk about it. Because like I said, here in Europe, Irish pork has the lowest carbon footprint. So that's why I love getting out and telling people how great our pork is. It's close to being carbon neutral. So if you've got a good story, get out there, engage with the public and tell it how it is. So thank you very much. Not sure, have we time for a question or two?
We have quick time for one question, maybe?
What's your advice at the stage we're at? We're kind of going down the European pathway. Steer us away from pitfalls. What's your advice?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, I think with us in Europe, we've kind of learned from our mistakes. When we've moved to loose sow housing, we've seen how it's done right and how it can be done wrong. Like, for example, on one of our farms at home, we have electronic sow feeders, transponders. They work great, except sometimes you lose the tags, and that's a problem. And then in our other systems where you have a long truck, well, that can be a problem because there's a lot of aggression and fighting. And then when it comes to the farrowing crates, there's so many systems out there, and in Europe there's a lot of different companies selling a lot of different systems in terms of loose farrowing. So it's very hard to know where things will go, but again, it's not until the end of this year we'll know the phase-out time that we will have. But I think we need a long, long time to phase them out. So I would say just keep looking at what we're doing in Europe, because it's going to come down the track eventually. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Shane.
No problem. Thank you.